الله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأزلفت الجنة للمتقين غير بعيد. هذا ما توعدون لكل أواب حفيظ. من خشي الرحمن بالغيب وجاء بقلب منيب. ادخلوها بسلام. ذلك يوم الخلود. لهم ما يشاءون فيها ولدينا مزيد. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Brothers and sisters, welcome to this latest webinar, which today is titled How to 10x Your Productivity for Mosques. And Alhamdulillah, we are joined by Brother Monir Mohammed, who is the head of technology and innovation for the National Zakat Foundation. On a personal note, I heard a brilliant speech by Dr. Sahel Hanif in Turkey last year, and it was one of the rare occasions where you hear somebody speaking and they completely transform the way that you engage and you view a particular topic. And that was the experience that I had in the way that I view zakat. It was so fundamentally transformative to how I see zakat and the importance of zakat. And so please do go on. If you don't know about National Zakat Foundation, please do go and have a look at them and check them out, inshallah. Brother Munir, we're going to hand over to you for your presentation for about 30 to 35 minutes, inshallah. And then if anybody does have any questions, kindly request you not to unmute yourself. Just put your questions into the chat function and we will pose them to Brother Munir, inshallah, after he has concluded his presentation. And we will try and get through all of the questions and then try to, inshallah, conclude by 9 p.m. So without any further interruptions, Bismillah, Brother Munir, over to you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for that introduction. MashaAllah, this is the first webinar that I have ever hosted or actually even presented on. So please excuse me if I don't follow the normal protocols of a webinar, but given my experience and I suppose involvement in this space from a practical point of view, I thought I had the relevant experience to bring about my learnings, as well as my team's learnings and my organization's learnings that I could share with you as a wider community. So if there are a couple of things here that I need to do, first of all, can I ask the host to give me admin access to the chat? Because I'd like to share some of the material with you as a file in case we have any issues, technical issues, then you can always refer to them. And also if afterwards there's some takeaways as well. So there's a presentation and a couple of takeaways that I would like to share with you. First of all, just a couple of minutes on myself. I've been with NZF since 2014 in capacity of technology. Alhamdulillah, I've seen the transition of NZF from a paper-based system with, sort of like 20, 25 applications coming in per week to a staggering 25,000 plus applications a month for zakat. That's on the application side. And obviously, conversely, on the sort of like a donor side, we've seen astronomical rise in number of donations during Ramadan. We typically get about 3 to 4 donations a second. Okay, so that gives you sort of like the kind of scale and size of what we're actually working with. And in that experience of moving from a paper-based system to an electronic system through to OCR, digitization, cloud-based, etc., we've kind of taken the full cycle of learning from paper to the word that I like using the least, or the letters I like using the least, is AI. And funny enough, I mean, we're here talking about AI. And the reason why I don't like using it is because, actually, I'm going to explain that along the way, right? You'll actually understand that. But because it's such a widely used term now, and most of the tools tend to use it as a kind of what's the word for it? What's the right word for this to describe that? It's an optic, a lens through which they're describing the tool, and it's kind of like advanced sort of reasoning or kind of like machine output that it can actually give. But for all intents and purposes, AI will be used from here on. So I'm going to hit you with my, let's have a look. I think I've got admin rights now, so I should be able to share this presentation with you. Bismillah. Nope, not yet. So that's okay. We'll share that later. And
We have given you co-host rights, so you should be able to share.
okay. I think it's up in the chat, unable to send file due to admin restrictions.
Oh, I do apologize. I don't know if you can send a file, but maybe we could show it and we can send it later. We can email it to
Yeah.
everyone.
Okay. Well, then we can email it to everybody a bit later. So, inshallah. So I'm going to share my presentation here. Bismillah. And hopefully I should be able to see that. And we'll go into presentation mode. There we go. Hopefully you can see the entire screen and it's pinned. So in all of this experience and learning, we've managed to boost our productivity, and it's fair to say that our productivity boost is a blueprint for other organizations in this sector. What we do, i.e. the pressures, internal and external to us, are very common across most organizations. And I'm just going to, bismillah, bismillah, there we go. And you'll be delighted to know that a great portion of the kind of like presentation that I've put here today, actually, I used AI to put together. So it's going to come across as very polished. It's going to come across as it looks very familiar, shall we say, for those of you that are familiar with AI output. But I have to remind people that it's a tool, okay, like any other tool. It's only as good as the hands which actually operate it for the output that it's actually trying to get. But the information and the model and what we're going to describe today is all unique. It is from our learnings and our experience, and it's not derived solely from an AI's output. Okay, so mosques are really, really important places. We know that in our community. They don't just provide places of worship alone. They provide a lot of pastoral services. They provide everything from educational classes. They act as places of refuge at times, especially during COVID, things like that. So they're multi-use organizations, and they are hugely pivotal in our sort of like environment. But the people who actually run those organizations are all pretty much volunteers. The majority of them are volunteers with a low number of staff, and that's mainly down to financial constraints as well as sort of like employment issues within the community itself, and finding the right people to run those. So we have a huge strain on resources, i.e., requirements of need are huge. A small number of people that are actually trying to deliver those needs, very limited resources, and yet, as we've evolved as communities, our demands of our organizations have become astronomically high. For example, governance. You find now typically that people are asking a lot more from our organization in terms of governance, tracking of donations, communications, because of the channels and different channels of communications we've got. They're also exploding. We have those demands upon us as NZF, just like a masjid has. And all of these have to be managed somehow with the limited resources that we've got. So, I'm having trouble there. There we go. I would probably go as far as saying that a small proportion of organizations now have the capability to turn their manual processes into automated processes. And they've done pretty well in certain areas, but quite poorly in the majority of areas. Okay. So if all of these kind of like crises, these small crises exist in all of these different areas, you kind of end up in building this perfect storm of expectation and delivery. And that's something we faced as NZF as well. So capacity challenge, we had to be able to respond to people very quickly, increase our staff, or sort of like increase our systems. We have to be able to free up people from doing sort of like mundane tasks in the organization. And those are tasks, for example, in our particular scenario, perhaps I can give a good example of that is where we have people applying for grants. We need to be able to verify they are indeed people with valid forms of ID and they are living in the UK. And that's something that's quite tricky. It's easy, you know, so like quite tricky, especially when the number of people that you're dealing with don't quite have the right type of ID and they don't have right travel documents, etc., etc. So a lot of it is very mixed, and it can become incredibly difficult to do. And then you've got the sort of like issue as well about training staff, retaining staff, all of that knowledge that's being built up. And if the jobs that they're doing and the functions they're doing are not interesting enough for them, then it becomes quite difficult to keep retaining them. And finally, there's the issues of ethical technology. Right? And what I'm going to focus around that and speak to you a little bit about is how do we make sure that the technology we're using has certain boundaries and that we put in safeguards and we learn from those people who've already sort of been through this journey about how to implement them and put them in a safe environment so that not only technical people, but also management and volunteers can work within those frameworks and feel that they can trust them, feel that they're safe using them, and the outputs that they produce are relied upon by the community. One of the examples that we have, a great example of that is a chatbot that we released called Zaki at NZF, and that offers zakat advice. And we had quite interesting challenges learning how to develop that and output that. Okay. Our actual journey at NZF is not one that happened, you know, a year ago, 2 years, actually a 6-year journey. And when we actually started looking at how do we automate our systems and make it easier because demand was increasing dramatically. And then we actually went through a journey of not only reviewing and assessing what systems and tools that we needed, but also making sure that we had the right people to help us. So that meant going out into the community, finding out those people with expertise in that field, getting them to advise us on how to look at systems that might help us to grow and become better at what we do. We also went out and looked how do we train people internally, because that journey can't be taken in its own right as a technology journey. It had to be taken with everybody together and manage those expectations of transformation, which was quite important because transformation is not just a technical process. It's also about bringing people on that journey with you so that they understand why they're doing it and making them feel that it's a tool there to improve their quality of work, not to replace them. Because quite often, sometimes when new systems come in, there's that fear to change. And we had to find ways to overcome that. And that took time. So hence, quite a long process, a lot of learning done in that sort of like time frame. And most importantly, I think, throughout all of this, what we needed was a strategy, a strategic vision. What are we trying to build? What does it actually look like? And that could be a single sentence. It could be a paragraph describing what that looks like. But as you can imagine, when you start unpacking that paragraph, it becomes volumes and volumes of paperwork, diagrams, presentations, etc. And that's all about partly discovery of trying to find out what it is that actually you would want to build and deliver. In those kind of delivery phases, I've described some of those already as we've been speaking, but identifying pain points, yeah, this is all about talking. It's about sitting down with people, understanding what do you do on a regular basis. So some of the pain points that I will discuss with you here is our grants office particularly have a problem assessing bank statements, understanding the person's financial position. And that can be scattered across multiple financial documents. And a lot of those, what I mean by that is sort of like debits and credits on bank statements, for example. Are they actually receiving benefits from the government? If they are, how and where those benefits are being used and where do they go? So looking for discrepancies that might actually be inappropriate spending. So there may be somebody with an issue with gambling and those sort of things. So these are really small detail that's hidden amongst a kind of volume of information. And it's a pain point because it takes a lot of time for a grants officer to go and find that and then basically highlight it and make sure that it can signpost the individual, to the right type of support and help that they need in order to achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve with them. Choosing the right tools, again, there is no one size fits all. There isn't one product that you can actually say, guys, we should all use this, because it's very, very much connected to the skill set that you have and the resources that you have available. That was our problem as well. So we had to increase the number of staff that we had at NZF with the right skill set. So we needed somebody with data, and analytical capabilities. We need somebody with support and training capabilities, and then vision and innovation insight. And around those people, obviously, because we had to build a framework of management, and there's advisory panel that would advise us on which direction to go in and where our pain points were, because they had much higher sort of like view over the overall project. And the advisory board bought sort of a set of tools that we were not familiar with as well in order to help us achieve those goals. So we tried and tested a lot of things, but in order to get to those tried and tested things, what would work, we really need to understand what our problem was and what our pain points were, and pick the right tool for those that we could see solving our problems over the next 1 to 5 years and beyond. Finally, most importantly, we tested and tested and tested and tested. A good example of this is that we have a triage mechanism built into our system that allows us to assess the majority of the key points and indicators that we're looking for before they reach a grant officer. Now, in order to do that, we actually had to program these in and teach the system what to look for, and all the different anomalies that people would come forward to us with, and test that, iterate that over tens of thousands of cases where we already knew the outcome. And that was validating that if we did this, this would happen. And from that, we learned that human in the middle was very, very important. And the human verification was very important as well. So we built a structure around this test rigorously that was linked directly with our audit system. So all of our work is audited, and what we did is we put technology into the audit framework to make sure that it was checked externally of the technology team and those people that are running those systems, to make sure that it was ethical. It didn't make poor decisions, and any decisions it did make that we were not quite happy about, there was a feedback loop built into that. And that's what testing taught us in a massive way, so that the quality of the output could be replicated. Right, lost it here. Bismillah, there we go. All of that resulted in some tremendous numbers for NZF. As you can see on the screen here, these are the real big highlight numbers. There's a lot of other numbers in there that were improved. Imagine we're victims of our success. We provide a service to the community in which the demand is immeasurable. But for us to service them with the same level and quality became quite slow. At one point, we were actually quoting 5 months waiting list before. So you can make an application to start, and then we'd probably see the case in about 5 months' time. That was unacceptable, but not through any real fault of ours. The demand was just astronomical. So we had to find ways to reduce that. Right now, today, alhamdulillah, I'm happy to say, with our systems and automation that we put in place, we're actually down to under 2 weeks. That's probably more than 80% actually, but at the time of writing it was 80%, and when it was published it was 80%. But So you imagine from 5 months down to 2 weeks. So if you make an application for zakat, we can typically get round to you in a couple of weeks, depending on the complexity of the case. But that is kind of like the optimum figure we've reached. We haven't given up. We want to carry on working from the learnings that we've had, how AI and systems automation is helping us. We want to be able to get to people in 72 hours. That's a goal. It's a lofty goal. Inshallah, we'll be able to, sort of like be able to do that. It's a massive sort of like achievement, and I credit that to the team, the guidance, and the vision that we've had from our NZF team in general. Alhamdulillah. But what can we do for the community more effectively? And that is about the masjids that that we've actually referred to in this presentation. How can we get productivity up? From the research that MCB has done and a number of other institutions have done, we've got a good idea of what productivity gaps masjids have in general. And there are some common productivity gaps all around. But there is no one size fits all. So what we've gone through is a similar exercise that every organization is going to have to go through. And I'll come to what those exercises look like in a few minutes, inshallah. But in all fairness, administration is a massive headache, and it can be improved by automation. It can be improved by using AI in the right places. Operational transformation can occur, and it's not difficult to do at all. It's literally about taking 3 steps or 4 steps to get it solved. And then finally in this is the authentication part. And I've referred that into the report that I've actually done, much deeper insight into the authentication. And this is about getting things done ethically, respecting our faith, respecting our community, and those who put trust in us. So the 3 points that I think are really, really important for us as organizations, as masjids, is first and foremost adjusting our mindset. And that is actually embracing technology and embracing the tools that are available to us, because they're a gateway. And they're a gateway to enable us to serve our communities better in a way that nobody gets left behind. Because at the moment, for many of us, accessibility to the masjid is really for those people that literally come through our doors. And there is a subset that actually engage pretty much exclusively online. The younger generation, sisters, for example, their engagement levels are not necessarily through the front door of the masjid. They are different, they use different tools, different access mediums for that. So the mindset has to change. We have to be able to embrace that and say, technology has to play a major part in what we do. With that mindset change comes obviously the culture change, right? And that culture has to be that we need to value the skills. We need to be able to have trust in the processes that we put down and use those as a way of getting to people with skills to help us achieve those parts. Okay. We did it at NZF. We made sure that we actually invested, in the mindset, the people that would actually give us the vision and foresight to do that, and the people who had the skills to be able to deliver that. Those skills gave us the tools, and those tools actually delivered. And we've got a great story to tell, which has been picked up by Microsoft as well, which is actually now an international published story on their platform as a success story, and shows how we did that and what we actually achieved. Bismillah. So how are you going to go and do this? That's a really interesting question. In the next 3 slides, I've tried to break it down and keep it as simple as possible. Let's start with opening a conversation. And that conversation has to be with your leadership team. And we've got a set of tools that you can actually use that help you assess where you are in this journey. Inshallah, I will share with you some of those tools via email. Obviously, you can't share them in the chat itself. But one of them is a framework for change, which if you answer 2, 3 questions, it'll actually tell you the skills that you're missing in your organization and what you need to work on. And it will advise you using an AI sort of like a tool set and how you can acquire those tools and how you can acquire those skills to make sure that you have all of the components that you need in order to be successful. Because this is transformation. This is change. It's about where we want to be in the future, not where we are now, where we have been. The MCB AIM framework, which was debuted, I think, at the AGM this year. Alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful framework. There's a lot of research that's gone into it. It's a very simple thing where you go through a set of questions and answers, and it'll tell you basically where you are on what we call horizons. There are 4 horizons. We'll talk about that later, and hopefully the paper that's going to be circulated to you will give you more detail on that. I think what I meant by keeping it nice and simple, once you open the conversation, we actually want to do something. Let's commit to one process. That's my challenge actually to everybody I'm talking to, is say, if you want to get started in a journey, 60 days, one process. Maybe you can do more, alhamdulillah, but at least in that 60 days, but you should be able to do one process. And I promise you, some people will be very confident, say 60 days, we can do 10. But it's actually quite challenging, because the first 30 or 60 days that you do will make you really think hard about your vision, about where you want to be, and actually understanding whether you have the simple things in place. For example, the governance. Does the governance structure look like what it needs to look like to support the vision that you've got to be able to achieve that? And there'll be a lot of gaps that open up from that, which will give you an opportunity to focus on, inshallah. And in order to achieve that, the best way to do that is to find a champion, a person that's willing to take this on. I don't believe there will be any shortage of that in our community, because pretty much everybody you talk to now is talking AI. And if you frame that conversation in such a way, it becomes hugely attractive to that demographic that's probably not engaging as much as we'd like to. And that is that younger generation. Maybe, obviously, older generation as well, but generally speaking, they're all excited about this new field. And this field is akin to the printing press. It's akin to motorized vehicles coming to the planet. It's huge in terms of what it will change and what it will be able to do. So getting that champion together was very important, because they'll have something to deliver. And if they deliver that one process and show it automated, you will be able to have the first brick. And then that brick will build upon others, inshallah, and then we can build ourselves the institution that we're actually looking to have. In this slide here, I've only put 3 use cases really that you could probably think about. I'm sure you've got dozens yourself, and in the material that will circulate by email later on, you're going to find a whole sort of like a PDF on this that goes through a number of use cases with examples, of course. But this is all about the discovery. This is all about sitting down at step 1 and picking a process. It's like, what process would you like to pick? Is the problem, and don't pick the hardest problem, please don't, because picking the hardest problem will actually put you off. Pick a problem that is fairly simple and has a reasonable impact, even a low impact, because that's your showcase. And that showcase is really, really important. And I'll come on to that in a second, because one of the things we learned was that if you can demonstrate and showcase that you're able to achieve this, and then you get much better buy-in. You get much better buy-in from the community. More importantly, you get better buy-in from your donors, because you can get them to pay for some of these initiatives. If they can see, and you can attach that directly to a benefit, you can say, we need £10,000 to build this, because this is what it will help us achieve. And this is where we are on the journey to getting there. So that's really important because that will solve the gap in terms of how do we fund this or how do we get people on board with this more and more. I found that in my local community, I had huge sort of interest from younger females in the Muslim tech sector than I did males. And that may be because they they've got a lot of ideas, but not many people willing to listen to those ideas. Recently, we did a hackathon at Imperial University with 200 students. Mashallah, in our sort of cohort, two sisters, twin sisters, they actually won the prize for a grant officer chatbot in which you could talk to a chatbot and it would actually help you assess whether you're eligible for a zakat grant or not. And they did this all in one weekend. I was deeply impressed, mashallah. Very brilliant set of skills. And I think those sisters will go far and make dua, with them that they go far. But all of this requires, great buy-in from the team. One of the things that we recognize going around and doing work with some of the masjids for what we call our CZP program at NZF, which is a community zakat program. We're champion the mosque in a local community that hands out the zakat, is that they needed the tools to be able to interact with people at a local level. And one of the tools that we found was really useful for us was a mobile app. And we've partnered with Mosque app to be able to deliver that. They're a UK-based agency, and they have their own Mosque app, and they have a huge amount of services on that. And within that, we built in the zakat a delivery mechanism and partnered with one of our zakat hubs to be able to kind of like make it better, shall we say. And a lot of learning has actually gone into that. But that's going to be your key. You need a mechanism from which to collect data, to be able to get people to interact with you, etc. It's not just going to be physical where people come to the masjid itself. We need to be able to connect with those people outside the masjid. As I said earlier on, a lot of the connectivity people are doing now is online. And online doesn't just mean having an app. Online also means WhatsApp, all of these different channels that they have and where they communicate. So in order to get to them, you would need to have a strategy where you've unified your communications medium to be able to go out and message those people. Okay, that's the last of my slides. Hopefully you're still all awake. Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah khair for listening to me, and I'm going to take some questions if you have any now. I pray that that's gone as I expected.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Monir. That was very informative and helpful. I'm sure everybody will agree. If you do have any questions, please do post them into the chat function, and we'll try and get them answered by Brother Monir. It's worth reminding everybody that this webinar came about really to continue on the momentum of the AI conference that Muslim Council of Britain hosted in Birmingham last week. It was a fantastic day. There were so many incredible keynote speakers speaking about AI, the importance of Muslim organizations adopting AI ethically, the importance of Muslims being at the forefront of this emerging technology, how to use it ethically and in a way that aligns with our values and our ethics and our morals. And then we also heard from the brilliant Sister Ibtihal, who very bravely stood up against Microsoft and the role and the complicity of their technologies in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. So this is a series of various webinars that we are planning to host on the topic of AI to give Muslim organizations, faith leaders, and individuals as well more of an insight into emerging technologies and artificial intelligence. Brother Munir, we've got a question here. The benefits you noted are some of the best I've seen. Did everything work first time, or were the lessons learned to help you get the tech to do what you wanted?
Oh gosh, what a $1 million question. Of course, they didn't work first time. I am very fortunate that the environment and the team that I have are very forgiving and understanding that things are not going to work first time, and they were very supportive of that. And I guess also we had the benefit that we already had test cases, tens of thousands of test cases to test our technology against without having to live test against real applicants and real people, I guess. That helped us. But yes, it was a 6 year journey. And in that 6 years, there was a lot of painful points, a lot of going down certain roads and finding out they were dead ends, and they were not going to help us basically achieve the goals that we wanted to. But most importantly, I think where we save time in uh, not making mistakes was advisors. I cannot stress the importance of that. And myself, I'm in my mid 50s. Okay, so I've done a lot of learning. Alhamdulillah. And I've got to say one thing, I found the notion that people were telling me what to do quite hard to take because my kids will say, you don't take advice well. But that's I don't take well from them because they don't know any better. But the advisors that we had, advising us in technology and what we were doing were very understanding. I can't thank Allah enough for their advice, and they saved us from a lot of pain.
Jazakallah for your response. Another question by Sister Asma Ajaz Ali. There is still digital poverty or digital illiteracy in the Muslim community. What can what can we do to support communities from a practical point of view? And I think maybe just expanding on that question a little bit is, some people may think that, AI is so technical, and the parts of the community that are still so far behind, it feels like it's a big jump to get to where they're from to AI. But in the meantime, how can we get them upskilled in order that they don't feel like that leap is so scary and such a big jump?
Sure. I understood that question slightly differently. If you don't mind, I'm going to answer it how I understood it. You're right. Digital poverty is a thing, and it's massive. And typically, NZF is like the Experian of the Muslim community. I'll be honest with you. We hold more data on Muslims in the UK than any other organization to the level of detail that we have. So we understand this aspect, digital poverty. What we typically used to do is tell people to go to the library. Yeah, go and find someone to help you. And that's how we kind of like got around the digital poverty side, understanding where they had the right devices, etc. But increasingly, that was not an answer. And for us, our sort of like strategic advisors and strategic thinkers thought it was better to send them to the centers that are there to support them. And that is the masjids. Community Zakat program, the NZF, is multifaceted. That was one of the things. It's make our centers where people should be going for support in multiple areas, not just for zakat. It's where the children should be going for madrasa classes, should be going to get support. I mean, I don't need to go into all that. You understand all of those multifaceted services they give. So that doesn't get them out of digital poverty. What it does is gets our community support them. It can't solve that problem necessarily, but it can actually support them to get their needs and get them where they need to get to. And that's quite practical. And I think it has the success it's shown means that it does work and it can work.
Jazakallah khair. That's a really interesting take on that question as well, how we approached it from so many different angles. Dr. Muhammad Salim has asked, thank you for your very useful information. Do you know any organizations that offer consultancy to do situational analysis and advice on tools to use and maybe brief initial induction on their applications?
Sure. I don't want to plug any specific organizations right now. I think as it's a question, I'd like to take that question away and come back and prepare an answer with my advisors and people that I rely on to give me great, faithful advice. And then I will actually pass that along to you all, inshallah, so you can all share it. Because the idea is learn once and then share the knowledge. And that should be checked by people who know what they're doing, right? I don't profess to knowing everything, but I know who can help me. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I think that mapping exercise of all of the organizations and existing players in the space, just so that people can see, would be really helpful resource, I'm sure. It feels like you need someone with at least some good degree of technical knowledge and focus to help deliver these changes. For a mosque, how would we find someone to help specifically in this regard, finding the right people?
Okay, that's a really good question, and I think you're right. It does come across as being quite a large challenge. We're doing our best to produce tools that make life a little bit easier. I put in the link in there for one of the tools that I'd actually put together to make sure or to help you understand what you need in order to get ready for change. It's based around a very common or well-known model. So if we're able to put together tools like this for our own community, I think that is how we use AI and services like this, because this tool that you've got there was produced by AI. Okay, it was produced by, and we told it the problem that we want to resolve and then fine-tuned it to come up with an output. And it gave us the result that we needed. But in order to get to that, we needed to learn about the individual problems. And that's that discovery thing that will be, I keep referring to, is understanding what those problems are. But before we get to those problems, it's all about, having that vision and saying, look, this is where we want to be. And discovered that earlier on. We can tackle these challenges about literacy and also availability of skill set. We just haven't put this problem to our community. I'm sure if you recognize that you wanted to solve this and said, this is what we want to do, this is a trial case that we've done, help us on this journey. In your community, you're going to have at least a dozen people, if not more, that have experience. And I wouldn't say they're sitting there, but with the unemployment rate that actually exists within our community, they're willing to come forward because this is exciting. It's different. Now they can actually be a part of building the digital mosque, not the physical mosque. The physical mosque is already there. That digital building will outsize any physical building, because physical buildings, I noticed in my local community as well, there's like about 11 or 12 mosques, alhamdulillah. But, they have physical capacity and limitations, etc. But online, what you build online, you can scale to whatever. So that's where I think key is going to come in, is show them this is where you want to go, show them that this is what we want to achieve, and then give them some freedom to achieve that within the boundaries of ethics and the frameworks that you set.
That's really helpful. I think sometimes mosques and community institutions don't realize how much institutional or even experiential knowledge lies in existing within the community that they can tap into. And we always feel like we need to go outside of that bubble, outside of that community to be able to get the expertise when it's sometimes sitting right in front of us. Asher Khan has asked, given the novelty of some of the technology available, especially AI, what were some things you considered in managing costs?
Sorry, I missed that question. Could you say that question again?
So, given the novelty of some of the technology available, especially AI, what were some things you considered in managing costs?
Given the novelty, yes, absolutely. I think I started this earlier on, is the misnomer of AI, right? And I'll answer this question in a roundabout way, if you don't mind. Um, there is no intelligence in AI. It's literally a word, a buzzword that people are using. Right now, there isn't any intelligence. It's really a case of computers computing a probability outcome. They cannot think for themselves. And people are putting out lots of tools to do this, pretending that it's making really, really clever decisions. It's not. It's about the information that you feed them, the prompts that you're going to give them, and framing yourself in a way to get that to make it look like it's some form of intelligence or the output of that. So there's a lot of things people are trying and doing, and from that trying and doing and learning, we're guilty of that. We try at least 2-3 tools a month that come out, and that costs us, right? But what we realize is we really need to have very, very clear business requirements, right? This is what we want to do or they want to achieve. And then we go out and get a tool that actually meets that. rather than the other way around, which is go and find the tools and then solve the problem. So that's for us at NZF, that was a typical problem we had because we'd get some tools, see really great, and think, right, we're going to apply them to use them inside our organization. But with proper planning, strategic foresight, we're able to now say, actually, this is what we need to solve. Let's find a tool to that. And pretty much when you do that way round, which is the right way to do it, of course, you find that you only pick up the ones that you need, and therefore you keep your costs significantly low. And finally, I think on that side of it as well is that we decided to build our system at what I would call an enterprise class, so it can scale globally to millions of users rather than think about a much smaller. Because obviously we're at a multinational level situation, whereas masjids typically only need to plan for, say, 5,000 people. 10,000 people. That's kind of like the capacity of most masjids in their community. So you don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Again, that's probably a great example is once you know that you actually have a nut, you're going to pick up a suitable hammer, and that will help you control your costs.
Jazakallah khair. Brother Mahmoon has asked, apologies for joining late. Are there any training programs that mosques can enroll in? Brother Mahmoon, we already covered that off. So inshallah, Brother Monir is going to share some resources and do a little bit more research into some mapping of existing consultancies and organizations that could help. And he's already shared a link to an application, I believe, that you can go and check out. And I think we'll close on this particular question. Assalamu alaikum. My masjid has tasked me with helping their technology aspirations. One of the challenges I'm concerned about is the fragmentation of communication tools, trying to connect with the congregation. Is there anything in your experience that can provide a more unified communication that cuts through all the noise and keeps them engaged? I think that's coming from the perspective of, different age groups and different demographics using different tools, perhaps, all the various social media tools versus messaging tools. I don't know how you'd like to tackle that.
Well, for us, that was actually a problem as well. I share in the problem that you've highlighted there. When we actually went to roll out our community zakat program, we realized that a lot of the masjids didn't have the necessary tools to be able to reach the congregation or to reach the people that needed support. So we went out and did a bit of a research project, found out who all the providers of apps and services were, and whether they were fit for purpose. Could they do, sort of khutbahs? Could they do like learning resources? Did they have a help resource in their Sharia plan? All of these things of governance documents, were they built in, etc. We realize a lot of the tools are very specific. They'll do like a timetable for prayers, but then that's about it. And then there'll be tools that just for communications. And one particular tool that we came across was Mosque app. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that, but I'll put a link into here for you. It's a UK-based organization, mashallah. They obviously set up from the ground as something they wanted to build for the community. And they pretty much encompassed all the different services a mosque would need to be able to deliver its services to the community. And you kind of found what I might term as a one window operation through which not only can you get people to communicate with you, but you can communicate out to them as well. But that didn't stop at just through the app, because they have the facilities that your messaging can actually go to the WhatsApp channels. They can go through to, TikTok, other mediums that you've got. So they've got that all built in. And we found it's really useful. So we partnered with them, and NZF offers that now to our CZB partners who actually wish to embrace app-based services and have a more holistic platform through which they deliver their services. So that kind of like got pretty much most of the services that they're looking for at the masjid level. And then from that, as a data medium, because we're getting all the information from there, we're looking at how can you now improve your productivity with that information that's actually coming in? How can you make it faster? How can you do bookings? Most of these things are already answered within there, but they've got the infrastructure to help them improve and go to the next level.
Alhamdulillah, and just like, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward those initiatives that really start at a local level, and people think that other communities and other masajid and institutions around the UK and around the world can benefit from them. So Jazakallah khair, Brother Monir, for your time. I think that's a wrap on all of the questions. Inshallah, we will have our next webinar your step-by-step guide to digital transformation in about 3 weeks' time on Wednesday, 13th of August. So please do make the effort to join that one, to register so you get the reminder emails before the event. And once again, Jazakallah khair to Brother Monir. I found that incredibly helpful and useful, and I'm sure so many people that tuned into the webinar did. Reminder that this is all recorded, so you can go to the MCB's YouTube channel and watch this particular webinar in case you missed it, in case you want to share it more widely. And you can also watch the recording of the incredible keynote speakers and panel discussions from last week's MCB AI conference as well. So, Jazakallah khair. Thank you all for joining, and Jazakallah khair, Brother Munir. It's great to meet you. And inshallah, we will see you all on our next webinar very soon. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.